Hello, my name is Amber Wolfrom, and I am the Employer Outreach Specialist at the Family Resource Center. And I'm here today to talk to you about general self-care. There's a lot of reasons in day-to-day life that we may need to take a look in and make sure we're taking care of ourselves. And so today we're going to just cover some of the basics to that self-care, what we need to be watching for to make sure that we are on the right track of self-care, and just a few tips that may come in handy. So first, I want to thank you for taking a minute to step out of your busy lives to concentrate on you. I know that's really hard to do, and we don't do it enough. So first, thank you for doing that. The beginning of the conversation, I want to start with the continuum of care. All of us every day are on a mental health continuum, and it changes throughout the day. So hopefully when we wake in the morning, we're waking with a healthy, on the healthy continuum. So hopefully we are ready for the world. And it might look like we have normal mood, we were able to sleep well, we have a normal appetite, we're taking care of that appetite, and we're ready to just kind of go out and face the day as it is. Things can happen throughout the day that may throw us onto a reacting scale. And that might be someone pulls out in front of you and scares you while you're driving, or you get a disruptive email at work, something like that. It can throw you off a little bit, but hopefully it's something you can rebound from quickly. If we stay in reactory too long, we might see signs like forgetfulness, procrastinating. It can affect our sleep. And those are the type of things then that we want to take the time for self-care. If that's not done, we see individuals begin to spend time in injured or unfortunately even in ill. And you can see on the slide the concerns there. And so what we're going to talk about today is ways to try to stay in the healthy continuum, to identify when we might be in reacting or injured or ill, and how we can best combat that. So this slide right here is definitely not all of the stressors that we may face on a daily or weekly basis, but it's some of the common ones that we as humans come up against. Things like relationship issues, job change or job loss, financial changes, or financial instability, the death of a loved one, possibly having chronic illness, or even a substance use or misuse that may trickle into addiction. So all of these things are things that we may come up against and that we can hopefully get assistance with, either through reaching out to peers, reaching out to professionals, or taking the time that we need to process all that's going on. And in the day-to-day world, we often don't get a chance to do that. And what happens is our protective wiring kicks in. So each of us has the fight, flight, or freeze way of dealing with things. It's wired into our brains. So in the prehistoric days, it was very helpful for us to be able to go out of the thinking mode and into the back of our brains and just decide if we're going to fight something, we're going to run from something, or we're going to freeze and stand still and hope the danger doesn't see us. All very helpful back then when we were being hunted as we were out hunting. But while sitting at our desks or behind the wheel of a car or preparing a dinner, those are not the mechanisms that we necessarily want to spring into, right? But we do it naturally because the body is still geared for that survival. We're designed for momentary stress with long recovery. But what we find in today's world is we stay in moments of prolonged stress and we don't get enough recovery time. That almost then begins to put us into fight or flight more frequently, but also then puts us into like a sense of almost vigilance. We're wondering when the next shoe is going to fall. We're wondering when the next bad thing is going to happen. And we are responding with, the best way I can describe it is, you know, if you're ever driving down the highway and you're driving too fast and you come up over a hill and you see that little silver car sitting there, and instantly your palms are sweaty, your heart is racing, you're trying to look cool, but you're flipping on your blinkers and you're honking your horn and you know not to hit the brake to get off a cruise, but you do anyway. all of that disorientation and that fluster and that feeling, and then your heart just beating, that is a stress response. And we know where the stimulus came from, right? It's that little silver car. Now, do we drive that way the remainder of our trip? Generally not, because the lights don't turn on, hopefully. The little silver car doesn't move, and we drive on, and then we take our cruise and we bump it and we bump it. I don't know, maybe you don't. Maybe you do really well, but maybe you do. And so within about 15 to 20 minutes, heart rate's back to normal. We're feeling good, right? We're feeling normal. That's a normal stress response. If we're not keeping that under check, individuals can begin to feel that more frequently and not have that recovery time. So understanding protective wiring can often give us some clues as to how we're reacting to something. And if there's not that little silver car sitting there, then where is it coming from? So symptoms of stress. You're going to notice in the next couple slides, there's many overlapping characteristics. So with stress, we're going to see irritation, anger, denial, uncertainty. We're going to see maybe lack of motivation or feeling sad or depressed, trouble sleeping, maybe difficulty concentrating. When we're seeing signs like that, it's a good time to step back and use some of the techniques we're going to talk about here in a little bit. But if we're not identifying them, if we're not taking the time to identify them, that stress response can unfortunately morph into other things. So we may begin to see signs of anxiety. Now, there are those of us that have a generalized anxiety that is a chemical change in the brain. The brain induces some of that anxiety. And the good news is there are treatments for that, and there are medical interventions for that, and there are stress reducing techniques for that. But what we see a little bit different from stress to anxiety is nervousness and restlessness. That feeling of danger or panic, like that little silver car is there when we don't know what the stimulus is. The rapid heart rate, the rapid breathing, and the breathing is normally more of a chest breath than a diaphragmatic breath. So, we get that tensing where then we go to turn our neck and our necks crack or our backs hurt or our shoulders hurt because we've been doing so much chest breathing. And we may have difficulty again, though, with concentration, with sleeping. Also with anxiety, we start to see some stomach issues. This slide, symptoms of depression, again, there are individuals that have the brain has chemical imbalances that can cause depression where things might seem like everything is going really well. And again, we're fortunate that there are treatments available and there are interventions available, and in our community, even great supports, which we'll talk about later. So if someone's starting to see signs of depression where maybe they hadn't been there before, they would look things like sad or empty, helplessness, a feeling of worthlessness, maybe some irritability, less energy around things that they would like to do, maybe aches and pains. Research is showing that depression can show itself in lower back pain and other centralized pains. So we want to be cognizant of if we feel this start to creep in. Now, someone might feel, quote, sad or irritable for a day or two. When we're looking at, are we seeing signs of depression, we really want to know, is it something someone's been experiencing for 2 weeks or close to a month, where it seems like the ebb and flow of the day, they still seem kind of, flat or feel the word depressed. They feel depressed in a way. Suicidal behavior has some of the other characteristics that we've talked about on the other slides, but there's some specific hallmarks of suicidal behavior, like talking about wanting to kill themselves, talking about not wanting to be here anymore, looking for ways, looking for means to carry that out, talking about a hopelessness that's kind of beyond repair, feeling trapped or unbearable pain. And so when we start to see the things on this slide, it's not a matter of, well, maybe I should go and reach out for help. It's a matter of, I need to do so. And if we have people in our lives that we care deeply about and we're seeing or hearing some of these things, we want to reach out to them and for them immediately. Um, and remembering asking someone or talking to someone about this is not going to put this in your thoughts. It's not going to make someone carry something out. They might just be waiting for someone to talk to them about it, or you yourself might be hoping someone will say something. And so in this slide, the big thing we would like everyone to know is please don't wait for help. If you're seeing any of these signs or symptoms in yourself or someone that you care about, someone that you work with, please reach out. And again, our contact information is throughout the slides, but will be on the final slide as well. In Hancock County, we're fortunate. We've got a crisis hotline number. We've got a behavioral health care system that is responsive. We've got a hospital that's responsive. We have law enforcement CIT trained. No one has to be alone when they're feeling things like we're seeing on this particular slide. So we talked about stress and the stress response, and we talked about the mental health continuum. There's a stress continuum too. And so when you're thinking about where am I at in my day, how am I feeling? Am I feeling healthy, or am I reacting, or am I injured, or am I ill? You can see also how your stress response is going with, that feeling of I got this. I'm thriving. I can knock this out of the park. I'm geared and ready to go. Or I'm surviving. Like I'm right here. I can get everything accomplished today, but it's going to take everything that I have. Versus struggling, where it's I don't think I can do this. I don't think I can put one more thing on my plate. I don't think I can handle one more thing going wrong. And then there's crisis, where I don't think I can survive this. And where we are on the continuum has a lot to do with that need for, is it something where I can like stop what I'm doing and take 5 deep breaths and maybe turn out the lights and just, kind of go into a safe space for a while? Or do I need to reach out for help? Whether it be, a parent or a sibling or someone who can step in and help for a short time. Is it an EAP program at work? Is it a behavioral health or a support group type offering? Where we are, if we're on the thriving and surviving, then we can probably do the five-minute checkout. But if we're in the struggling or the crisis, then there's probably a need for a little bit more. In talking about a little bit more, there's a quote about ships that I really like, because it's one of those things like I don't know how planes work. I get in them and I fly on them, but if you said to get on the plane, you have to describe how this whole thing works, I'd be walking. But I do get boats, and I like this analogy of ships don't sink because of the water around them. They sink because the water gets into them. Because we often can feel overwhelmed by everything that's going on around us, but it's how much we let it in that makes the difference about how we can overcome it or how we can at least work through it. So we need to make sure that while we're surrounded by chaos, we're very careful about what we bring in. And so we're going to cover some quick tips about how to do that. So when we're talking about self-care, the wording in this slide is deliberate. First, it needs to be daily. And then second, it can be quick. So there's things that we can do every day and just little bursts that can make a very big difference about how we can not only see the day and react to the day, but how we close out the day and start the next one anew. One thing that would be great to know even a little bit about is circadian rhythm. And in Ohio, it's very important because we lived outside a lot longer in our evolution than we've lived inside. We have lived near campfire and candlelight a lot longer than we have lived with electricity and being able to control our environment. We are still very much engineered to rise with the sun and set with the sun. And so circadian rhythm is really fascinating because chemicals start in the brain and stop melatonin and begin to release adrenaline, and with the rising of the sun and our body temperatures warm to get us going, and concentration peaks at specific times, actually around noon, 1, right around the time that we're getting the most sun. And towards the end of the day, as it begins to get dark, our body temperatures begin to lower, and then we have melatonin production. So it's really interesting the way this all works, because if you're familiar with it, then maybe you won't fight it as much. And how we fight it as humans is we often force ourselves to be where we're not. So whether it be with sugar, whether it be with caffeine, burning that midnight oil, keeping the lights on late, and we're trying to fight through that sleep that's really wanting to set in, because naturally that's when it would be happening. So if we understand it, we might be able to employ more natural things like water and exercise, things that will help rejuvenate the body heading in the direction we wanted to go to, versus chemically pushing it in places it's not going to be comfortable. It's one of the reasons why in Ohio, starting in the fall, we all start to kind of crave hibernation. We want the soups and the chilies and the blankets, and we just want to go to bed when it's dark, and it's hard. So if we understand it, though, we might not fall into that crash and craving of caffeine and sugar that we often do. So if you get a moment, YouTube from a reputable health source a little bit about circadian rhythm. Another very important part about how our day goes is how our night goes. Sleep. Our body needs sleep to not only repair and rebuild, but also to long-term store the information from the day. If we're not getting good sleep, we wake up foggy, but we also lose some of the information that we've been trying to gain the day before. We want to make sure during the day we're getting great light exposure. Even in Ohio, even on a cloudy day, if it's not pitch dark out, that means there's sun. So we need to get outside, and we need to try to absorb as much as we can. If you can, sit by a window during the day while you're working. If you can take a phone call outside confidentially so you can get some fresh air and get some light, any way that we can be grabbing it throughout the day is going to help with sleep at night. We also need to practice putting the electronics away sooner. And that means televisions, cell phones, iPads, video controls, all of those things. Technology, that blue light goes to the back of the brain and says, don't produce melatonin. So you're sitting there, you're laying in bed, and you're doing your last Facebook, you're doing your last funny goat animal video, and then you put your phone down and you say, okay, now I want to go to sleep. And the brain's not ready, because we literally charged it up and then put our head down and said, now go to sleep. It's not that responsive. So reducing the blue light exposure in the evenings, and preferably 1 to 2 hours before bed if we can. Caffeine, you drink it to stay awake, probably not the best thing to have when you're trying to go to bed. So that's one of those in the body, depending on how your body responds, potentially 6 to 8 hours before sleep. You want to avoid caffeine. Naps are great to just grab here and there. If you can grab a little 15-minute nap when you get home before you prep dinner, something like that, that's great. Prolonged naps, though, those 90-minute, 2-hour naps, throw off our sleep pattern, throws off the circadian rhythm, and then it can make it more difficult to fall asleep at night. So sleep is almost like a diet. You want to try to keep it as regimented as possible, even on the weekends, so that it gets into a nice healthy routine. So all of these things listed on the slide can be very beneficial, especially looking at your environment for your bedroom. Where do you tell your brain you want to sleep? Is it a multi-use room? Then it may be difficult for the brain to go, oh, this is where I go to sleep. So dark shades, dark curtains, take the electrical tape, cover up all the random lights from the things that are plugged in and charged in, turn down the light on the alarm clock. If you can turn the heat down at night so that you're going into a nice cool room, it'll help you stay cooler through the night. All these little things, a nice mattress. If you can, you are going to hopefully be spending 6 to 8 hours on that thing every night. It should be comfortable. Pillows, it's amazing how they're engineered now. Side sleepers, back sleepers. investigate that about yourself, because this is a time that's going to get you ready for the next day. It really, it's almost like picking out your wardrobe. How you think how much time we spend on what we're going to wear and what we're going to do during the day. If we don't get a good night's sleep, it's already kind of thwarted. We want to get outside too. And again, in Ohio, that's like lovely May through, hopefully late October. But then in the winter, people tend to shut themselves inside, and we need to get out. Again, we're more geared for outside than we are for these artificial environments that we've created inside. Walking can improve short memory. Being outdoors is de-stressing. Some people like to just go look at water. And my husband will say he's going to the reservoir to fish. He never brings home a fish. So I know he really enjoys just going up and sitting and just staring, and watching the calming effect of the water. And I'm actually thankful he doesn't bring home reservoir fish, so it's a win-win. But also walking through the forest, a lot of benefits to that. There's actually now therapies involved in going outside and grounding with the soil, and being in the forest. So any chance you can get to be out in the elements, of course, hopefully properly dressed for the elements, is great. And if you've got a puppy dog that likes to go on walks, even better. You can build in some exercise while you're out. Food to the body is fuel. What you put in is what you get out. No different than a vehicle or a car. You put good gas in, hopefully get a good output from the vehicle. You put in bad gas, you kind of know. You know whether there's water in the tank or something that's not supposed to be there. Our body tells us the same thing if we're listening. The body says, hey, I really wasn't, that didn't do me a lot of good, thanks, but no thanks. But as humans, we put a lot of context on the food that the body doesn't really care for. So we have celebrations, and we have commiserations, and we have work parties and things like that, where there's food that's brought in that we will eat, or we will celebrate and eat a lot, and then the body pays the price for that, which then generally we do too. So sometimes we just have to step back and remember food is fuel. And what we want is to get a good mix of the minerals and the nutrients and the proteins and the building block foods that the body needs in order to repair. And it needs to repair every night. So we need to get good water consumption. And all of that said, not just on, Mondays when we remember we want to do these things and then go, well, we were really good Monday through Wednesday. So now Thursday, Friday, Saturday, we can kind of slack off. We're asking the body to perform well for us every day, then it needs good fuel every day. And it doesn't matter which one you pick, Mediterranean or keto or vegetarian or, Metasaurus or whatever one you pick. As long as your body responds well to it and you're doing it in a way for fuel. We want to not only be physically active, we also want to be mentally active. And that, as we get older, can make a big difference. As you get a little older and you find yourself writing more to-do lists, just to remember to, pay bills or get the kid to the right place at the right time. Life can get very chaotic. So these mental activities, and if you want to watch TV, great, but maybe watch TV about a topic you don't know, or about a part of history you want to learn more of, where you're stimulating your brain versus just sitting and watching a rerun of an episode you've seen 3 or 4 times. We want to keep that mentally stimulated. And then if you can put a little physical activity into it, great. Learn a new game. Learn a new activity while being physically active. When it comes to not letting the water into the ship, when everything's going on around us, sometimes it's a matter of reframing the situation or reframing the scenario that we're confronted with. And because how we see it is how we're going to experience it. And we can sometimes just reduce our stress by reducing the perceived stressors, okay? this can be a little tricky. This is when I like being in front of a live audience because I can see nods. So you want to notice your thought patterns in a way of, am I one of those people that's all or nothing? Like if everything's going, it's either everything's going well or nothing's going well. That's not realistic, right? It's not how a typical day goes. But we can get into that thought pattern where it's like, well, I was supposed to do this and I didn't get it done. So now everything's gone. So I'm not going to worry about anything else. We just get into these very rigid patterns of thinking that can then throw us into negative thinking very quickly. Do we overgeneralize? I live with a 15-year-old teenager girl. There's a lot of overgeneralization. There's a lot of magnification. There's also a lot of emotional reasoning that happens, but hopefully we grow out of that. But under stress, sometimes we revert back to what's comfortable and we can just be like, well, who cares because all of this is going wrong. It's a matter of looking at in perspective. So for instance, depending on when you're watching this video, 2020 might be perceived as a pretty dumpster fire of a year. But if you look through the year through the whole perspective, hopefully some people got to maybe spend more time with immediate family than they've ever had before because of canceled events. Maybe some individuals were able to buy things that their family needed or save up for things because they were spending less money eating out. They were spending less money on mandatory stuff that they had to do because all of that was shut down. Again, it's the perspective of the situation. And it's a little bit deeper than just like a glass half empty or half full. It's when something's coming your way, you have a moment where you can say, how am I going to interpret this and how am I going to internalize this and what am I going to do with it so that I can get the best out of the situation possible? So the reframing is really a point where you're challenging your thoughts. For instance, if I'm driving to work and I get a very slow driver in front of me, yeah, they're throwing me off of my schedule, but I keep my favorite CDs in my car. I still have a CD player in my car. Or you could put it on an MP3 and then I get to listen to the whole song on my way where maybe I'd only heard part of the song. And it's as simple as that. And you were thinking, well, what big difference will that make? That one thought process of taking something that could have been a negative and making it a positive then spins my next interaction. So if you get a chance to practice reframing, you can do it really easily. You see somebody at the grocery store and they act like it's the end of the world, that they have 3 things to buy and you in front of them have a whole cart. Ask them if they'd like to go ahead of you. Something that very simple, that energy around you being negative, if you can make that little impact and reframe their experience, it reframes yours too. So it's a fun thing to try. And if you're a people watcher like me, if you like to see what makes people tick, when you see something that seems stressful, you reframe it a little bit and you watch the whole room change, you watch a mood change. It's really fun to do. And you will benefit from it too. So what we want to do is just be mindful, be in the moment, see how we're responding, see whether it's rational, and then say, okay, I did the best with it that I could. There's like the best you can be and the worst you can be. And every day we're just trying to ride the line in the middle that we can. If we can be the best self, awesome. You can't do it all the time. It's not possible. So we're really aiming just for that nice middle, even Steven ground. One way to kind of keep a pulse on this is to know where your energy is going. Where are you putting your time? Where are you putting your care? And what are you doing with that? So I read the book, Stephen Covey's The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People in a book read at work. And the only thing I remember from the book is the circle. And I now I keep this circle in my head all the time because we can get really worked up about stuff that we get concerned about, but we have absolutely no control over. I wish I could make world, happenings better for people. I wish I could change things at the governmental level or, wherever, but I only have so much influence. And so with that, I kind of only can give it so much concern. But there's things I can do on the local level. There's things I can do in my home life. There's things I can do personally that I do have control over that maybe in the end will have some impact. And that's where we have to put our time. So if we're spending a lot of time on the internet and we're reading about all of this things that are going on in some, far off place, that's a lot of time and energy away from little things and changes we could be making right here in our own world, in our own homes. So think about the energy, where you put it and where you would prefer it be. And as we're thinking about where to put that energy, really what we're doing is trying to help us create some resilience, because life is going to happen. Things are going to happen every day. What can we do to build resilience? And when we do, make sure that we do it both physical, emotional, spiritual, and mental, and not all in one basket. So an example I often provide is I used to run and I really enjoyed it. And I had a whole social circle around it. And it was my physical activity. It was my mental distressing technique. But it was all wrapped up in running. And then I had a lower back injury. And I could not do that without pretty extreme pain for quite some time. But all my resilience was put in that one activity. And it was all, although it helped me emotionally and it helped me mentally, it helped me spiritually, it was all in the physical. And when I couldn't do it, I was a very nasty person to be around for a while. And I wasn't a happy person either. I mean, I was just dwelling on all I could not do because I had everything wrapped up into that thing. So as we're building resilience, as we're finding interest, while we're mentally stimulating ourselves, while we're getting out physically, we want to make sure we're doing that in a healthy, even way across these different domains so that we're not putting all our eggs in one basket. Because like things will show us, there might be times that we can't get out of our houses. There might be times we can't go do something. Well, what else can we do during those times? So in building resilience, we want to look at communicating with families and friends and even peers about potential stress that we're having, where we might need others to kind of help us through. We might want to ask about access to our mental health services, whether it be through EAP or what does our insurance allow for. If you think about it, every year we go and get a physical for work generally, or our doctor wants us to come in and do a physical. But we don't think about the most important organ in the body, which is the brain. And we're not taking the time to say once a year, maybe we need to do a check on that, see how it's doing, how's it firing. Keeping a consistent routine, even on the weekends, is important. And when we do get a break, if you're on a call or you're at home and you're just talking to someone on the phone, do stretches, do deep breaths, do something, where you can get that little break, and then check in with supports even during that time. Send a quick text, hey, hope your day's going well, or hey, crazy day, let's check in after work, or let's check in after we drop the kids off at sports, or whatever your day looks like. We want to stay informed with trusted sources. And I'm going to keep that vague because I don't want to go down any particular paths, but just make sure wherever you're getting your information, whether it be about the daily information, whether it be health-related information, financial information, there's information available everywhere. Make sure where you're getting these details is a trusted source. And if you get information from somewhere and you look at the line and you see the organization or the business or whatever, do a little fact finding before you take it and run with it, because we want to make sure you're getting good information. And if it has to do with your school or your church or your business, make sure what you're hearing is coming directly from the source, because we spend a lot of time way out there in that circle of concern around things that we later find out were a rumor. And then all that time is gone. You're never going to get that time and energy back. When you get a chance, if someone's coming at you and their energy is rough, or they're having a difficult moment and they're projecting it onto us, there's a technique called mirroring. So if someone comes to you and they're really heightened and they're really talking like this and they're really excited, we start talking slower, we start talking lower, we give eye contact, we do these things to hopefully, instead of us following them and getting in that tizzy, we have them follow us, and we help bring them back down to literally to the ground so that we can have a good conversation. Think about when you're walking in a store and someone just smiles at you. You don't know them, but you're passing in the aisle. Well, hopefully after 2020, you can see people smiling at each other. You just smile back. It's a mirroring reflex. And so utilize that in times of difficulty. If you've got someone confronting, or it's just a tense situation at a workplace or at home. Take breaks from the news, including social media. While it's fun to sit on YouTube and pull up the goat videos, I'm kind of projecting here. I like the goat videos, or the cute new puppies or things like that. There's also ads being fed to you. There's also information popping up on the side. Anything in too much is not good. So just think about that in moderation. Remind yourself that whatever is stressful will pass. Things will pass. Connect with others. Stay connected with your physician. Stay connected with your doctors. Get prescriptions filled. Even in times of financial difficulty, we need to find the resources to do those things so we can stay well. And if you believe that you're misusing substances, and this one mentions prescription medications or alcohol or drugs, but if you feel like you're misusing food, if you feel like you're misusing money, if you feel like something is off balance, then it's time to just reach out and seek a professional for some additional help. All of these quick self-care tips, we want to make a habit. And to make a habit, you need to do it on average 66 days for something to become a habit. I wouldn't recommend taking the 3 to 4 self-help slides and trying to do those all every day, like from a get-go. But find something that kind of speaks to you and add it in. And just try to add it in every day. And once it sticks and it's a habit, then you can add something else in. Or you can take a look at that circle of where you're putting your energy and go, I lose a lot of energy to this. I'm going to pull that out. My new habit's going to be to spend less time or less energy or less emotion or less thought on that, and make that the habit. So we don't always feel like we have to take everything on all at once. It's the little degrees of change that it will be lasting. Drastic things tend to snap back, kind of like a rubber band. We think we're going to go in and just, going to change everything tomorrow. Those things tend not to last. But we add one thing here, we remove one thing there, we substitute something here, and those are the kind of changes that typically will stick. So I hope you found this helpful, and the information, the slides that you have been seeing, the handouts are available. Just look below. There should be a little link. You might have to copy and paste that into a browser, but you'll be able to get those handouts. The resources and the references that I have for all of that information will be in those handouts. So, and my information is on the last slide. So as you watch this, if something stands out, or hey, or something doesn't add up, call me, because I love to chat about it. And or if you're looking for a resource and you can't seem to find it, we here at Family Resource Center would love to be that connector for you, that warm handoff to get you going where you need to go. And if we're the right place, then we'll get you to the right people here. So thank you so much for your time. Again, thank you for taking time for self-care, and take care.